There since the beginning, so I'll never switch. I told her we gon' make it to the top, and when we get up there, I'm not gon' stop loving her. I ain't gon' put no one else above her. She my lady and I wanna show her.
Welcome back to my channel, and I'm gonna be giving the science/biology majors advice on college, because honestly, being a science major is a whole different ball game. So let's get started. One, make sure you go to every single class. I know this applies to everyone in college, but it really applies to biology or science majors, because those science classes are packed with so much information that if you miss one class, you could potentially miss a whole concept, and then it'll be hard for you to try to teach yourself. I mean, it won't be hard, but it's easier if you go to class and learn it versus skipping a class and then trying to teach yourself. Those for biology classes, a lot of these biology and chemistry concepts build on each other. So if you miss one concept, then you won't be able to understand the next one because you missed the one before that. Two, make sure you do good in lab. So at my school, I don't know about anybody else, but labs are 25% of your grade and lecture is 75%. So if you do well in lab, your lab grade could potentially bring you up a letter grade. Just make sure you do well in lab. Even if you don't care about lab, just, try to copy off somebody, get some notes from a particular person. Just make sure you do okay in lab. Like, you don't have to be on it. Like, I'm not saying that you have to get an A in lab. Just make sure you do decent so your grade won't go up or down. Three, make sure you do practice problems every single day, especially when it comes to these math classes and these chemistry classes, especially chemistry. If you don't do any extra work outside of these classes, then you end up with like a C or a D. For in biology classes, try to pay attention more than you write stuff down. You're gonna walk away from the class like, what did I learn? I don't understand this. So to avoid that, I just really suggest that in your biology classes, sit down and just kind of look at the board and listen, write down some of the key words, some stuff that you probably won't understand. You'll be surprised at how much information you remember from the class when you sit down and pay attention versus when you're trying to write stuff down. Five, make sure you study at least a week in advance. A chance to really sit down with the information and just absorb it. It gives you time to visit your professor's office hours. It gives you time to go to tutoring, and then by the time you finish, you will have time to review all the information, and when you take the test, it'll be fresh in your mind. Six, make sure you read. Sit down and crack open that book and read, especially when it comes to these biology classes. It's one thing to go to class and then look at the lecture, look at your notes, but if you really just sit down and take the time to read the book and see how these processes work. So let's take some easy, like photosynthesis, for example. You can look at the pictures, look at the diagram, but really sit down and you read about how that stuff works, how the electron transport chain works, how the citric acid cycle works. You will understand how all those things come into play, how a plant gets its energy. But if you just sit there and you look at the pictures, you're not gonna know how that stuff works. So I really highly suggest that you crack open that book, you crack open that chemistry book, you crack open that biology book, you crack open that math book, and you sit there and you read it. Half of the questions that you have in lecture will be answered if you read the book. Also, you probably won't succeed in any of your science classes if you don't sit down and read. Seven, when you study, make sure you copy down all the important figures. Goes with number 6 when I said read. When you are reading and you are studying, try to write down all the major figures. Citric acid cycle, write down your molecule, your plant and your animal cells, your bacteriophages. It's easier for you to draw, like physically draw those figures out, and then you'll know how the little bitty parts work together and how they work separately versus just reading about them. Reading about it and writing down those important figures kind of go hand in hand. Read about it, but if you are looking at the figures and you're reading about how those different parts work, much easier easier for you to understand that information. 8, if you don't understand something, go to YouTube. I really like YouTube as a science major because there are so many helpful channels out there. I'm gonna just tell y'all my favorite. So for chemistry, I have Professor Dave Explain, the organic chem tutor, and Melissa Mirabel. So Professor Dave Explains talks about a lot of the conceptual parts of chemistry.
What about the science stuff? Professor Dave explains.
The organic chem tutor, he does more of the math portion.
So benzaldehyde is basically a benzene ring with an aldehyde functional group attached to it.
Let's say you're trying to calculate the speed of light, you're trying to learn the basics of dimensional analysis, also get straight to the point, and he does practice problems. For Melissa Mirabel, she kind of does both. Like, she explains the concepts of things and she also does math problems, but she doesn't get too in depth with the math problems. Like, she'll show you how to do it and all that stuff, but she doesn't really do any practice problems. But I really like her because she explains stuff step by step. For biology, I have Crash Course and I have the Amoeba Sisters. So the Amoeba Sisters talk about an array of things.
Why? Because it features cells in your body that work day and night together to protect you from a constant threat.
I don't really know how to explain it. I just know that they talk about germs, they talk about viruses, and they talk about the differences between a plant and an animal cell and all that good stuff. And then Crash Course, I'm sure if a lot of y'all know about Crash Course, y'all probably know about Crash Course, but I like Crash Course because what's his name, Hank, he does a really good job of explaining certain things.
Transport fluids and store nutrients, and also is home to specialized cells called meristems that are responsible for creating new growth.
But there's just some stuff that you can't find on Crash Course that you can find on Amoeba Sisters. That's why I like to have multiple sources for the same subject. All right, make sure to try to make friends with people that are in your classes and in your labs. I particularly end up making friends in my labs because we may or may not like our instructor. So we would sit there and like talk about our instructor. Try to find you at least one person in the class that kind of understands what's going on or is equally as clueless as you are, because you know y'all can get together and then try to figure out a specific concept. It just makes stuff so much easier if you get at least somebody's Snapchat. I'm not saying get their number, but if you get their Snapchat and you can be like, hey, did you understand this? Send me a video of something that you found on the internet. Like in these science classes, you have to find somebody to work with. It's easier if you find at least one person in that class that may or may not understand it, and get used to teaching yourself. I wanted to end this video off on that note, but it's reality, especially because half of these science professors are actual scientists and they are not trying to teach anybody anything. They are strictly here for a paycheck, and that's the sad truth. Teaching yourself, because there will be some times where the tutoring lab is closed, no one's answering their phone, and YouTube may or may not have the answer. So you just have to sit down and be okay with teaching yourself, because when you go to college, and especially if you choose to be a science major, you need to know what you're in for. This video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. All my social media will be down in the description box, as well as videos that I have uploaded in the past. With that being said, I'll see y'all in my next video.